Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Retail Refresh, the show where we talk about everything to do with retail media and technology. I'm Sabrina, and I'll be one of your hosts today.
And I'm Rob. I am also here. You know, Sabrina, this is our first episode, and I'm genuinely very excited about this. We've talked about this idea for so long. And if I can get personal for a second, you know, ever since I was a young boy, I dreamed of hosting a twice monthly video series that digs into retail media and technology. Everybody said I'd never do it, but here I am. Take that, Mom.
Rob, that's so nice. I'm so happy that you're finally achieving this important milestone in your life. And since you talked about your mom, I'm just going to give her a little shout out here. Hi, Rob's mom, who might be watching her son achieve one of his lifelong goals. But I'm going to bring it back to the actual topic today. More importantly and more relevantly, we are kicking things off with BroadSign's resident retail expert and head of sales for the Americas, Karim Kanji.
Can I read his bio?
Yeah, go ahead. This is as much your show as it is mine. Go for it.
This is fun. All right. So Karim was actually around the retail world for a long time before joining BroadSign. He was a manager at H&M, Esprit, and Diesel. He was a retail operations manager at G-Star, and then he worked at Lightspeed as a business development and account executive right before coming to BroadSign. He's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the retail space, works with several of our largest retail customers here at BroadSign, and he also bought a new car recently. I don't really know if that's especially relevant to this conversation, but it's retail and it happened. Karim, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Sabrina. Happy to be here. And I did buy a car, and I was heavily influenced by what we're going to talk about a little bit today. So we'll keep that anecdote towards the end.
Perfect.
Is that synergy? I don't know. I don't come from business school.
I don't like that word, but sure, if that's what you want to use to describe it. But
Great.
It just so happened yesterday when I was picking up my vehicle that, you know, what we're going to talk about today really actually impacted the experience. So happy to talk about it today.
Love it.
That's great. So to kick things off, we're maybe just going to talk a little bit about the in-store retail media space. There's a lot that's happening right now. Stores are starting to digitize, and it seems like there might be a little need for 101 education on the topic. So Karim, to start things off, can you maybe give us a summary of what's going on in the retail media space? What are you seeing out there today?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that retail media has kind of exploded. You know, we see it and look at this, and this is a term that's widely used as the kind of the third wave of advertising. You know, this kind of all started with Amazon and really putting a premium on monetizing their digital assets. The only asset that they really got, although they have dabbled in physical retail, as we all know. But it really comes down to, you know, the product placement on the site, you know, the search engine rankings, sponsored content. This has become a huge revenue driver for Amazon, and you know, their competitors have taken note. You know, we had the acquisition of Jet.com by Walmart many years ago, which really kicked off their foray, and now the media revenue for Walmart is a $3 billion revenue line item for them per year, and it's growing fast. So, you know, I think retailers see the value in monetizing the assets that they've got, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Both digital, but now as well the physical or four-wall environment, and it's a really exciting time to be in this space for sure.
Yeah, you know, you're talking about some big numbers there. I figured I'd share this recent report from Group M. It found that retail media currently represents about 10% of global ad spend. And it's forecasting that's going to rise 60% by 2027. What do you think is going to drive that, and kind of what role maybe do you see the in-store kind of experience taking in that, you know, developing space?
Right. I think, you know, if we go back to the, you know, the retail media, you know, being established as a channel, it's really about reaching consumers where they are exhibiting some kind of purchasing or decision-making behavior. And typically that happens on an e-commerce site. You know, especially over COVID, that became even more relevant and true. The bulk, you know, the ad spend that's happening in the retail media space closely mirrors the global total ad spend in general. The bulk of it is in digital at the moment. However, one of the things that we see is the relevance of reaching people in a physical space, and that became again highlighted by where were people during the COVID lockdown, and where were people after, and where are people today, and there are many studies we can track on or touch on a little bit later, but it really is people are spending more time in the physical environment. I think if we look at a Path to Purchase Institute study that was released a few months ago, if you look at someone like Walmart, for example, 125 million people are typically their monthly audience reach on their e-commerce site. If you compare that to the bricks and mortar or physical locations, they're actually reaching 212 million people per month. So that's almost double the number of people who are in the physical environment. The same tracks with Target, 61 million online versus 118 million in store, as well as Walgreens, 31 million online, 71 million in store. So it's almost 100% more reach that you have with shoppers that are actually in the four-wall environment, because that is typically the preference of a shopper. And McKinsey ran a report that 20% of consumers say that they're doing all of their shopping in store exclusively. That is a huge number where there could be missed opportunities to reach those audiences in the physical environment.
So let's talk a little bit about those missed opportunities. What role does out of home play when it comes to retail media?
Well, I think we can distinguish out of home in two ways. So the first is the traditional out of home, or traditional digital out of home, which is really all about path to purchase. Are you reaching consumers on the way to the store, for example, or they're doing, they're going shopping for clothes in a shopping center on the weekend, and then they're going to stop at a grocery store on their way home to make, to get their groceries for the week and make Sunday dinner. And how do you remind them that these opportunities, to interact with the brand exist on that path to purchase journey? More importantly, and specifically to retailers and to brands, is actually reaching them at the point of purchase. So, we had ran a webinar about a year ago, which was all about influencing add to cart moments, how brands and retailers can do that. And I think that's where a major opportunity lies. This technology has existed for a while in terms of putting up a digital sign in a store, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's optimized or it's caught up to where the technology is today, and the technology has really matured. So this is something that retailers can address this opportunity to reach audiences, at that point of purchase time, which complements the whole path to purchase journey as well.
If I can just jump in with some, I don't know if it's an objection, a question. In the online space, right, if you are looking to monetize basically any service these days, one of the first things you do after advertising is allow people to pay to not be advertised to, right? What is it about in-store advertising that makes it a good idea for people who maybe are in general a little tired of seeing ads all the time?
Right. It's really not necessarily about advertising in the context of, bombarding people with ads 24/7, or, the 45 minutes that they're in the store doing their Sunday shop. It really kind of boils down to two things. So the first is really the informational aspect of it. So teaching people to eat healthier, or doubling down on a retailer's sustainability efforts. And these are all messaging that is intended to build brand equity and brand loyalty with the consumer. And actually, consumers respond very well to this. Receiving this information is largely a positive for them. The other side of it is the monetization piece of things, of course, but it doesn't always have to be an ad. It could be a recipe idea tied to a particular event. It could be tied to some other kind of data source, for example, a weather or sports score, or other trigger that can drive contextual messaging that engages the consumer in a way that could be monetized by a brand. So we talked about recipe ideas. The possibilities are almost endless. And I might want to touch on one really cool initiative that a retailer executed in Europe, which was really around COVID and the buy online, pick up in store. And you've got the consumer that parks in their reserved parking spot and checks in on the app to receive their order, and there's a screen that throws up a QR code saying, "Hey, while you're waiting for your order to be delivered, we can actually bring out a coffee for you while you wait." And that was leveraging the in-store cafe, which at the time was not serving customers, in a physical manner. So, in order to make best use of the assets that they've got, they were able to execute this kind of messaging, which maybe solved a problem, or maybe not a problem, but addressed a desire for a consumer to have that cup of coffee while they're waiting for their order to be fulfilled. They're not just sitting in the car staring, at an empty parking lot. And so you have these opportunities for engagement, which also then tie in with a monetization opportunity. To your point, it doesn't have to be a constant, consistent barrage of buy this or buy two get one free or 25 cents off this. I think those opportunities exist, but I don't think that's how you leverage your in-store real estate in the most optimum way, I would say.
I love that you mentioned contextual earlier, because while we were doing some research preparing for this show, we noticed that research showed that contextually relevant media increases advertising awareness by 18%. So, by adopting screens in store, or by being able to run contextual omni-channel campaigns across a retail media network, all the way down, as you mentioned earlier, from path to purchase down to in-store, where shoppers are showing up, they have intent to purchase. That can be a huge opportunity for these retailers. And I want to maybe dive into the retail media network. It's a buzzword. It's a hot topic. Retail media networks. We've been seeing it a lot in retail news. So maybe talk to us a little bit about out of home and the role it plays in a retail media network. What's the advantage of investing in in-store digital media if you already have every single other touch point in your retail media network?
Right. Well, there are a couple of things, and one of them has to do with context, actually. So I want to maybe just drop back a little bit into that, because one of the great things about retailers is that they have the absolute most important currency that you need for running a media network, which is data. They have very, very, very valuable, powerful sources of first-party data, and so what they're able to do is, reach you on your app. So, you get a notification to log into, X retailer's application, and you've got your, suggested weekly promotions, and you add them to your, coupon list or whatever, and then that brings you in store. I think one thing that, personally, I don't really do when I shop is I'm not really stuck on my phone. I use it, yes, but what's really open is my shopping list. It's not necessarily my app. And there's an opportunity to reach someone in the app, but it becomes a lot of noise at that point when you're constantly flipping between an app and a shopping list and blah, blah, blah. Is that a way to engage a consumer when they're in shopping behavior mode in a way that's contextually relevant? Maybe, maybe not. What I do know is that using that first-party data and pairing it with things like event-based triggers allows you to drive contextual messaging in store as well. So I think that really kind of sets the tone for the kind of experience that you deliver to a consumer, and that's what it's all about today. Retailers are hyper focused on the experience that customers are receiving when they are when they decide to go into the physical environment. So I think that's where out of home, the flexibility, especially digital out of home, the flexibility it gives you to change messaging on the fly. It's not static, for example, like traditional in-store activations like an end cap or a flyer. So you're extending that digital strategy from your e-commerce site or your email outreach or your social or your app into that final stage, which is the point of purchase. So it really completes kind of the whole customer journey all the way through.
If I can ask a part two to that as a follow-up, out of home is a dinosaur when it comes to advertising. It's probably the oldest form of advertising, and there's often a misconception that it's complicated, it's static billboards on the side of a road or on a bus shelter. Does the technology exist today for all of this to come to life? All of the examples that you've given, is that available today?
Yes, it is. And we talked earlier about the maturation of out of home and what's, or even digital signage and where it's come when it's not just a screen, you know, with a DVD player playing a DVD. Now it's, you know, something entirely different, and it goes to that point. This whole automation for an advertiser to be able to access these opportunities to address the consumer in store. So if you think about an advertiser that's planning a campaign, they're typically going to want multiple touch points along that journey. You know, we talked about, you know, the application, a retailer's application or a loyalty application, an email outreach, perhaps there's a social media aspect to this. Out of home, digital out of home, both path to purchase and point of purchase can now become a part of that. And it's very, very easy for that buyer to transact in the same window pane. So there's nothing else different that they have to do. They just have to understand that this audience is in this place at this time, and this is the message that I would like to drive to that audience. And then the retailers enable them to do this by having this in-store digital media channel available to the buyer. So the pipes and the bridges and the roads and all that, whatever analogy you want to use, that's all built. It's all there, regardless of where the brand is looking to reach those audiences. The capabilities are there to deliver those audiences to the brands.
At the beginning of our conversation, you kind of teased us a little bit, saying that when you bought your car, in-store media kind of influenced your experience in some way. Would love to hear a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, right from when we first, you know, were shopping for a vehicle, I visited a number of different brands and different dealerships, and one of the first one was a brand that kind of specialized in more sporty cars, and so they had a huge spectacular, and by spectacular I mean very large format digital sign, this beautiful kind of 3-story atrium where they were playing this, you know, sizzle reel, for lack of a better term, of the, you know, the performance car. So, you know, how fast they were, how great they were in the snow, even though it's a performance car, and so on. I thought, oh, that's really cool. It's really entertaining. It was really, you know, visually quite appealing and attractive. And then we kind of switched gears and went into another dealership for a brand that is known more for the reliability, safety, their design, and that sort of thing. And what was really cool about that is they actually took that experience and scaled it down. So it actually ended up being more of an informative tool where you could actually, this was a touchscreen type of a execution where you kind of scroll through, and, you know, beside every vehicle in the showroom, they had a little, you know, kiosk where you could scroll down and see all the options and the pricing. And one of the great things about it is that the sales team at the dealership, who were fantastic, by the way, used this as a tool. They weren't using this as a way to get out of, you know, answering any questions, nor were they using it to push anything in particular. They were really like, you know, look at it at your leisure. You know, these are the paint options that you got, and so on. And that actually, you know, presented a really cool experience for us. And we ended up buying from that particular brand. And even when, you know, we walked into the dealership when we picked the car up, you know, they had screens, you know, showing extended warranty options, but there are also screens like, this is what you can do with the vehicle. This is the vehicle, you know, going in the snow and carrying your skis and all that kind of stuff. So it actually kind of closed the loop a little bit on that purchase for us. And obviously for me, coming from that space, and, you know, my partner, who's definitely not from this space at all, you know, I think for her, it really was like, oh, this is really cool. You know, maybe we should get a bike rack for our bikes. And I'm like, well, I don't even have a bike. You have a bike, but I don't. She's like, well, go buy a bike. You know, we get this bike rack. Pure upsell opportunity for the retailer in the end, but it was framed as a lifestyle choice or a lifestyle upgrade, almost an aspirational one. And I ended up spending another $800 on a bike rack. There you go. So it works, but, you know, it wasn't. To go back to, you know, the comment of, do we want to be bombarded with ads? Do we want, as a retailer or consumers, you know, living in this dystopian universe of being constantly bombarded with ads all the time and then having to pay to turn it off? I don't think that's the point with this, right? The point was really kind of sparking an idea, sparking this desire, sparking this, you know, peer pressure from my partner to get healthier and go biking more in the summertime. And there you go. And, you know, you've got yourself a consumer and an influence on a purchase decision at the end.
That's awesome.
Pretty cool. Yeah, pretty cool stuff.
So it sounds like buying a bike is on your to-do list in the next couple of weeks. Now's the time.
See,
Now's the
see,
time.
they've even upsold the bike manufacturer on this, and you would think that they're like their competitors. The buy car, buy bike, don't buy a car, buy a bike instead. No, they've actually kind of closed the loop for the whole transportation issue. I don't know, whatever. But yes, the bike is on the next to do.
On the to-buy list.
To buy.
I have probably one more question that's on my mind as you were talking through the advantages and what in-store digital media can bring to the surface. So, where does a retailer get started?
It's a good question. Retail organizations are complex by nature. They're all different stakeholders, and I think you really need to sit down and first of all decide what the purpose of this is. We spoke to a major retailer who was very, very clear on what they wanted to do with this. They wanted it to really be 75% consumer engagement and brand building and equity building exercise, where that was really what they wanted to drive most of the time. They really wanted it to be about experience. And then, of course, because they already had a retail media network that operates within the organization, they wanted to open up a pipe into that source of revenue. So it was important for them to have, the capabilities to drive contextually relevant messaging using their own first-party data for their own purposes, and then, of course, open those up to the opportunities for brands to reach those audiences as well. But they were very, very clear. So I would really start with a goal-setting exercise. Typically this would start from a consumer experience team or a customer experience team, or even a visual merchandising team. But I would encourage a retailer to sit down and look at, bring in stakeholders from all groups, because this does touch merchandising. This touches marketing. This touches, brand equity. This touches the revenue side of things. It touches IT and operations. It sounds complex, but if you can get in a room and do this goal setting exercise, what is it that you exactly expect from this other than just putting a screen up in a physical store and playing some stuff? That will go a long way towards then, you'll come out with 10 more questions. That'll, spawn another 100 questions. But the more questions you ask, the better it is. And obviously we've been in this field for a long time. It's something we can help with, but definitely trust the experts on this. There are different models for this, but I would always say, just remember best in practice. Sometimes it's too good to be true. So just keep an eye on that as well. But, start with the proper goal setting exercise and go from there.
Speaking of questions, we're about to wrap up. And we warned you in advance, we were going to be making you be a bit creative.
Yeah.
So what do you think would be a cool idea for an in-store retail media campaign?
Cool idea for an in-store retail media campaign. I would love to see any kind of campaign that is driven, and this is going to sound a little bit geeky, but hear me out on this. I would like to see a campaign that's driven from a very strong set of data, whether that be from point of sale data, for example, messaging that's influenced by inventory levels, coming from retail and coming from retail operations in particular. That was a big, big challenge for me. Managing the kind of stock that I had within a particular location. I relied heavily on that data. But if I had been given an opportunity to push promotions tied to, stock age or the amount of stock I have in my store, it would have made my life and my visual merchandising team's lives a lot easier. Sabrina, I think you and I both worked for a company that did very, very fast moving sales.
You did.
If working the shop floor and having to flip fixtures 3 or 4 times on a Saturday, this would have helped with that. So it does sound a little unsexy, for lack of a better term, but this is what it's all about. It's about improving the consumer experience in store, getting them to where they need to be, getting them the product that they need in a timely fashion, and ultimately increasing sales for the retailer. Right, this is what we're here to do, and this is how this channel can help achieve that. Hope that answers your question.
It does answer my question. Now, because it would be weird for us to do it, we're not going to do it. Can you tell the people a little bit about Broadsign before you sign off?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So Broadsign is the global leader in out-of-home technology. We've been around for a long time. We probably service about 60% of the advertising-based networks around the world. And one thing people, I mean, we're kind of the company that you see us everywhere, but you just don't know we exist because we always kind of sit in the background. We service screens from Times Square to your local shopping center to your movie, cinema, theater, and everything in between, transit, you name it. Where people don't know that we're really, really strong is in retail. So we service some of the largest retailers in the world who have really decided that this is what they want to do. They want this consumer experience and this media opportunity, and we've been very successful doing it. So happy to talk a little bit more about us for sure, but more importantly, how do you bring this into your environment? And this is what we're here to help with.
Perfect. You can find Karim Kanji on LinkedIn.
Yes.
The nameplate will have his spelling. Ditto for myself and Sabrina. We're there too. We never actually really talked about how we want to sign this off. I have something stupid we can do for this first one if you want.
Sure,
but you give your goodbye first, Sabrina, and then I'll go at the end.
Oh, well, whatever I'm going to say, you're going to be even funnier than me. So I think I'm just going to keep it very low key and say thank you so much to our listeners. This is exciting. It's our first ever episode. So thank you so much for watching, for listening. I'm not going to pull a YouTube influencer, pull and say like, don't forget to like or subscribe. But if you do want to engage with us, we're always available and more than happy to communicate with you. So let's hear what Rob has up his sleeve.
Until next time, everybody, make sure to check back in a couple weeks to see what else we have in store for you.
Ching.
Nailed it.